Okinawa is located in the subtropical zone, surrounded by a beautiful sea shining in emerald blue, with one of the most precious natural environments remaining in the world. It is famous in Japan for its resorts. It is also noted as one of the bloodiest battlefields of World War II, with more non-combatants victimized than military. Now, large-scale deployment of Japan's Self-Defense Forces JSDF to the Nansei Islands including Okinawa is being rapidly carried out by the Government of Japan, Ministry of Defense. This is called the Nansei Shift. Yonagunijima Island 200, Ishigakijima Island 600, Miyakojima Island 800, the main island of Okinawa 8,000, Amami Oshima 600, and Tanegashima, Magajima Islands 1,000. It is estimated that a force of almost 10,000 JSDF will be deployed. The Ministry of Defense explains to the public that the purpose of the Nansei Shift is to fill a defense gap. However, the JSDF is carrying out simulation research on the various island strategies, whose result is that defense of the islands is impossible. There are no historical successes in island defense battles. Since dispersed forces should be deployed to defend the widely scattering islands, it is difficult to defeat an enemy's invasion troop only with a pre-deployed troop. Then why is the government of Japan deploying the JSDF to the Nansei Islands? The US has a strategy called offshore control. This means containment of China within its nearby internal ocean by blocking the line called the First Archipelago Line, through which China has to pass when progressing to the Pacific. This containment enables the US in an emergency to block most of China's world trade and to attack China without worries of nuclear attack on the mainland of the US. The basic rule of the U.S. defense strategy is to destroy the enemy's military and oceans as far as possible from the mainland of the U.S. or in the enemy's territory. In fact, the U.S. dispatched a littoral combat ship in Singapore in 2010. In 2016, it established a U.S. military base in the Philippines. The Nansei Shift to contain China by using the Nansei Islands as a breakwater is also seen as based on this offshore control strategy. People focus only on China's threats to the mainland of Japan. The risks to the area where the bases are established are rarely mentioned. What will happen when a military base is set up? Military buildup threatening a certain country will trigger military buildup by the target country, leading to an infinite arms race, which will heighten rather than lessen security risk. This is called the security dilemma. If an accidental conflict escalates, it has the possibility to lead to nuclear war. In Amami Oshima, the main island of Okinawa, Miyakojima Island and Ishigakojima Island, land-to-ship missiles and land-to-air missiles will be deployed. These are prepared to attack ships or military craft that try to pass the channels and sky of the Nansei Islands. The islands will be targeted and become battlefields once a missile is launched from one of these islands. Since the government of Japan cannot predict when emergencies will occur, residents will have no time to escape their island and will run about in a hail of missiles. The Nansei Shift prefigures, from the beginning, victimization of the Nansei Islands, as a battlefield. The September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks that shook the world provided the military industry with a new pretext for the War on Terror, and the Bush administration went on a war against Iraq based on false intelligence that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction. The prolonged war on terrorism, which continued with Afghanistan and Iraq, caused the U.S. military budget to balloon to an extreme level, reaching approximately $698 billion in 2010. This amounted to about 44% of the world's annual military spending. The U.S. Congress has mandated cuts to this massive military spending. The top executives of the U.S. military industry reacted with a sense of crisis. The military industry has identified the rise of China as a new threat. For the munitions industry, it is a piece of cake to inflame the Chinese threat and force Japan to buy expensive weapons. Will the Nansei Shift which aims to block the Chinese military, using the Nansei Islands as a coast levee, rather expose these islands to greater risk? 70% or more U.S. military bases located in Japan have already been concentrated in Okinawa. For these U.S. military bases, Joseph Nye, the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense, says that the U.S. bases in Okinawa are so close to China that they are vulnerable. Okinawa has already been placed at the forefront. Missiles will be launched to Okinawa if a war occurs between the U.S. and China. Considering the situation, measures should be taken to ease the tension in this region. There are some discussions that the islands should be left as buffer zones without a base as they are not suitable for bases. Takeshi Iwaya, Japan's Minister of Defense, said that the Nansei Islands are the forefront for homeland security. This just means that Okinawa should sacrifice itself for homeland equals mainland Japan's security again. The Nansei shift is a joint operation between the U.S. military, which wants Japan to keep China at bay, and the Japanese government, which wants to distract the Nansei Islands to defend the mainland. In any case, the Nansei Islands are now at great risk. The Nansei Islands must not become a battleground for the struggle for supremacy between the U.S. and China.